Now it's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation.
What are you people? On dope?
Where you can toke.
I inhale frequently.
Or you can talk.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
Or you can toke and talk.
10 federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
While we talk about toke on Toker Talk Radio.
So, by the way, when it comes to pot, if you're 40 years old, you live in a log cabin in Oregon, you got 12 giant pot plants in your backyard, have a ball.
Live from beautiful Portland, Oregon at Rolla J Studios.
Hey, this is great. Just not cannabis.
Plus your calls live at 971-533-7111.
They're walking on their pants with their cap on backwards, listening to Enema Man and Snoopy Poop Dog.
What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel? Gateway theory doesn't work. It's a reality.
Holland, is it real? Don't tease me.
We're locking up people that take a couple of puffs of marijuana, and the next thing you know, they got 10 years.
And now, here's your host, the guru of ganja graphics, the sultan of sativa statistics, and the worst nightmare of a reefer mad prohibitionist. A polite, perspicacious, productive pothead with a propensity for PowerPoint. Radical Russ Belville.
Oh, I know that sound. I know what that is. Yeah, that's me too. Oh, get him, don't let him go. You got him. Reel up, wind down, reel up, wind down. Welcome back, everybody. It's time for Toker Talk Radio. I'm Radical Russ, coming to you live from Rolla J Studios in beautiful Portland, Oregon, on the eve of this 3-day Memorial Day weekend. And I know you're all like, what? 3-day weekend? We had to go without live shows, and now you're going to take, Monday off? Yeah, I know. I know, I suck. Okay. But hey, it's the rule. We take our holidays off, and Memorial Day is one of those I definitely take off, to borrow a phrase from Herb Thrasher. It's very meaningful to me, Memorial Day. My grandpa served in World War II, Pacific Theater, never talked about it much. And I've had a lot of uncles who were in Vietnam. Larry, he's a vet, Vietnam vet. So it's important to us. So we're going to take Memorial Day off, and you should too, if you can. And companies that don't let you take Memorial Day off, I don't know, something wrong with them. Anyway, welcome back. It's Toker Talk Radio. We're live in the studio, and I am back from a tour of all over this country, folks. It's been a hell of a week, let me tell you. First of all, I spent a couple, about a week and a half in South Florida, in staying with friends in Miami Springs, and doing the Bobby Platshorn Meet the Experts 2 conference in Hollywood, Florida, which is about a half hour north of Miami Springs. If there's no traffic. Okay. So I had a great time there. I went to see Bill Marr in concert, and he was great. Good to see Bill Marr. Hung out in South Florida, got a whole bunch of clothes at one of the thrift stores. The thrift stores in Miami are something to behold. It's pretty amazing. Rows of men's dress shirts, not by size, by color. It was like, all right, there's the purples, and there's the light purples, and there's the blues. Perfect for a guy like me to put stuff together, for the show. So got a whole bunch of new stuff for outfits. So decent time in Miami Springs. Of course, the weed is weak and expensive. Let's just put it that way. Oh my God, I'm just smoking a whole joint, just trying to catch a buzz. It was pretty harsh. Bobby's event was fantastic. Meet the Experts 2. Mike Boutin was there from Weed Country. And Mike and our relationship began kind of with discord. I tend to say things that'll piss people off. And so does Mike. He's a very strongly opinionated man, too. And I was doing national cannabis radio for the National Cannabis Coalition. He, at the same time, was doing Cannabis Nation radio. His motif was red, white, and blue pot leaves, and my motif has always been kind of red, white, and blue and stuff. So, yeah, he came storming up at me at a conference one time as a Cannabis Cup. Where'd you get the idea for this? And, and was really upset thinking I was trying to rip him off. And really, I had no idea. It was National Cannabis Radio because it was National Cannabis Coalition, right? I had no idea, right? So we soothed it out. We talked it out, right? And over time, I've seen some of the stuff he's written and, of course, saw the Weed Country series on Discovery Channel. And he's been reading my pieces, and during this trip, man, we just hit it off. We got along great, went fishing together, had a good time. So Mike Boutin was there from Weed Country. Irv Rosenfeld, one of the 4 remaining federal medical marijuana patients, was there at the event. Also, Major Neil Franklin from LEAP was there speaking. Bobby Platshorn, of course, Black Tuna Gang, a.k.a. Bobby Tuna. If you don't know, he's America's longest-serving nonviolent marijuana prisoner. Did 29 years in prison for smuggling. Well, he smuggled in the weed that you probably smoked in the 70s. If you're my older listeners and you smoked weed in the United States in the 70s, or your parents did, then, Bobby probably smuggled a lot of that in for you. Anyway, it was a great event. A lot of great experts there. Everyone, it was packed. It was standing room only. And everybody, was just ebullient about how great it was. It just effusive in their praise. Just, oh my God, it was so great. We learned so much. But the highlight to me, Bobby Tuna invited us out on a paid fishing expedition. We have to pay a dime for this. It was on his treat. Took us out to a fishing expedition on this boat, the Right Hook, professional fishing thing, where they set the hooks for you. They set the lines for you. You don't got to do nothing, right? You just, if you lose a hook or you lose bait, whatever, you just move the pole over and he sets it back up free and throw it back in. It was phenomenal. Now, Major Franklin didn't get to go, but Irv Rosenfeld, Mike Boutin, and I all got to go, as well as some other great guys. Chris from the domains, I can't remember, FloridaCannabisDomains.com, something like that, was there. Great guy from Michigan, and his name escapes me, unfortunately. I'm so sorry. But, I meet a lot of people. But we had a great fishing expedition. So when we come back from break, I've got some video that I took with my cell phone. Out on the Atlantic Ocean, the water was super blue. We had a sea turtle come up alongside the boat. It was just a magical time. So we'll give you some of that, just some short little videos. Also, we're going to give you the keynote speech of Washington State Liquor Control Board member Chris Marr, talking about the implementation of I-502 to the people who got the I-502 licenses. This just happened just yesterday. And also, we've got a clip that was breaking news yesterday of a credit union that announces it is going to offer banking services out in the open, banking services, loans to the I-502 licensee businesses. So we'll talk about that and more when we come back on Toker Talk Radio.
The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
Hey, Tokers and Tokettes, Radical Russ here to introduce you to my friend Matt and all the staff at Lush LED Lighting. Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED Lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. If you thought LEDs were meet the tech of today, Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Let's just say I appear at a lot of events with the masters of indoor horticulture, and the harvests I saw from Lush LED Lighting were big, tight, sticky, and very effective. Check out LushLEDlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Double your rewards and lower your expenses with Lush LED Lighting. You can get 420 Radio on the go with the TuneIn Radio app for all mobile platforms. Go to rad-r.us/420tunein or just click the TuneIn Radio icon below the live radio feed on 420radio.org. Welcome back, everybody. That's Graydon Square with the Kardashev scale. You're listening to Toker Talk Radio live from Rolla J Studios in Portland, Oregon. I'm Radical Russ Belville, your host for this little trip through, well, basically my little vacation trip. I guess I'm playing show and tell today. It's not really marijuana related other than the fact that I was there with some of the coolest people in marijuana. Bobby Tuna, a.k.a. Robert Platshorn. Check out his memoirs, The Black Tuna Diaries. You can get that at most book outlets. And check out the movie Square Grouper. Square Grouper is a documentary that tells the tale of marijuana smuggling in the 70s, and Bobby has a very, very, he's basically 1/3 of the movie. So, check out Square Grouper and, give to the Silver Tour. That's Bobby's activism outreach for seniors, and he is getting seniors on board with medical marijuana. So Bobby, he got the boat for us. We got Mike Boutin from the Discovery Channel Weed Country show that was on, the reality show. We got Rosenfeld, one of the 4 remaining federal medical marijuana patients, and a bunch of other guys who were, well, not a bunch, 2 or 3 other guys who were there at the Florida Marijuana Conference, the Meet the Experts. So we're going to switch to some of this video. Now, understand, it's video off my cell phone, and I was born in Idaho, and this is the first time I've ever been on a boat on the ocean. So my balance is not so good. I'm not going to guarantee this is going to be, Spielberg level quality footage or anything. But here's some clips I took of fishing with Bobby Tuna.
Globally positioned satellites. You don't know when it's going down, so you travel light. It's easy to send troops to die.
This ain't not for Urban, man. He's on them little sailboats this year. Oh, yeah. We were out in a little, what was it? 19-foot sailboat. Shit like this the other day. 20-foot. It wasn't like this. Not today. For a minute, when that storm hit us, he was close. Oh, yeah, for a minute. Woohoo! Sorry for the podcast and audio listeners. There's quite a breezy day out there on the ocean, but there's this big, yacht that was steaming its way in. So took some video of that, zoomed in, so it's really shaky. So again, sorry for the bad audio quality. I'll talk through this though as we get these shots that aren't so audio special. But man, the water just blew. I mean, the bluest I've seen since the last time I went to Crater Lake here in Oregon. And there's Bobby.
Thanks for a wonderful, wonderful trip, Bobby. This is awesome. I'm loving this. Look at that one. Oh my God.
Yeah, another huge, huge boat out there.
That's enough of that.
Yeah, that's me exhausted.
All right. Thanks. Getting a panorama here.
Are you?
The mighty slayers of fish. Oh my goodness. Whew. Alright, so I caught a fish that
I caught him sideways, so, that's not right, apparently. And I don't get to keep him or nothing, but apparently he's a decent fish. He lived a decent fish life. He was topping his school. I had to make that joke. Hey, this is fun. We'll talk to you later. Of course, that's the Riviera Beach, Florida, that's behind us. We weren't that far off of the shoreline. You can still see all the buildings out there. It's strange to me when I look and see all those skyscrapers right there on the beach. You wouldn't see that in Oregon. All of our beaches are public lands. There's our turtle. We'll get him in frame here in just a second. So cool, this little turtle just following us along, getting some of the fish that some of the bait we were throwing off, There's Bobby's got a fish.
Yeah, you got to.
Bobby got a fish.
That's your damn swordfish. Now
he's about to strip it. It's a shark. You want me to poke?
Yeah, Bobby caught a fish and then a shark came and ate it.
Right down to the bottom of the reel.
That's all right.
It's a giant black tuna.
Wow.
Or a giant square pool.
We're going to re-spool your reel for you. It's my personal line. Yes.
Yeah. Bobby lost the fish. He could see it, as you're reeling in, you can see.
The tighter I turn the track, the better he got.
Everybody wants
Yeah, there we go. So some of our coverage of, and again, sorry for the audio quality on that with the wind, but it's just a cell phone. I didn't want to bring any of the good equipment out there on the ocean. The fact that I caught one fish was fine with me. I actually caught 3, but I was stunned to even just catch one. And I just had this notion that I was going to go in the ocean. I just had this feeling, Russ, you're going to go in the ocean. You're going to mess something up. You're going to trip. You're going to fall in the ocean. So I made sure I took my cell phone out, my wallet, my keys, everything, put away. Never did fall in the ocean, so I guess I did okay. And had some sunscreen, so I didn't come back with a sunburn either. So it was a good time. Big thanks to Bobby Platshore, and that was one of the most fun things I've ever done. And I look forward to doing it again sometime. And maybe to get out on Irv's boat one of these days. That might be fun. Get out on Irv Rosenfeld's sailboat. He was talking about, he's a sailor. He goes out and does this all the time. So that would be a lot of fun. I'd like to try that. As far as the conference went, it was a fantastic event. All this week I've been playing the panels from this conference that I was at, the Florida Marijuana Conference, and you can hear those replayed in their entirety this weekend on the Saturday edition. Here's what I'm going to do. On the Saturday replays of the Russ Belville show, I'm going to play all those Florida panels, and then on the Sunday block, these are 5-hour blocks. In the Sunday block, I'm going to play everything from this Seattle Marijuana Business Conference that I just did. So these are also online at 420 Radio News. So if you go to 420radio.org, just click on the big 420 Radio logo. That takes you to our show archives. And the very first panel is the 420 Radio News. You click on that panel, you're into the news. Or if you just want to go directly, it's 420radio.org/shows/420. And that'll get to the 420 Radio News. All the audio is there from both conferences, except for the parts where batteries died on a recorder and I lost parts, which coincidentally just happened to be both of my panels yesterday. So I only got half of both of my panels. But anyway, there's a lot of good stuff there. If you're interested, the downloads are available absolutely free at 420radio.org because this is a public service. We do this for the cannabis community. And we keep doing it for free because knowledge needs to be free. But it costs us money to run 420 Radio. So if you can become a VIP member or even just make a one-time donation, it would really help us. Check out 420radio.org. Look at the top for donate/VIP. Hey folks, it's 420 on the West Coast is the best coast. It's a lot better than 420 in Florida, let me tell you. Talk more about Florida when we come back, and then we've got Chris Marr from the Washington State Liquor Control Board.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. Please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the best way to honor the Constitution that recognizes our natural rights. Treat law enforcement with respect and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney, Omar Figueroa." Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at omarfigueroa.com.
Let him bring in the beat.
Adam Hand of Handmade Apparel produces quality custom designs for t-shirts, hats, and other apparel. Handmade Apparel is the official design shop for 420 Radio, The Russ Belville Show, Ganja John, and Cascadia Concentrates, among many clients who rely on Adam Hand for everything from short-run custom projects to full-run clothing lines. Adam's meticulous designs are individually crafted and screened in vibrant high-definition color. Visit handmadeapparel.biz to browse the selection of handmade gear or to get a personal quote for your own designs. Handmade Apparel, a proud supporter of 420radio.org.
Let him bring in the beat.
420radio.org is proud to replay Cannabis Network Radio with David Kowalski from Tampa, Florida. In-depth coverage from the front lines of the struggle to legalize cannabis from David Kowalski, a veteran activist fighting in the Deep South. Catch the replays Wednesday at 12 Pacific on 420radio.org.
Welcome back, everyone. 23 after the hour here in Portland, Oregon. And everywhere where the time zones are on the top of the hour, which is not everywhere. There are 13 time zones that are a half hour off. There are 3 time zones that are 45 minutes off. Therefore, there are 40 time zones. And that means there's 80 420s in a day. This little random useless fact brought to you by 420 Radio. I'm Radical Russ. I am so glad to be back home, let me tell you. Spending a lot of time in Florida is difficult. And it's not just because the weed costs way too much and isn't that good. No, it's not that. It's that Florida is drunk. In fact, I call it Floridrunk now. The embrace of alcohol there. And again, I haven't been to the whole state, but, you know, Key West and Miami and Hollywood so far, the embrace of alcohol there is just shocking to me. You know, especially in the context of how we always hear these drug warriors saying, you know, you can't have, you know, this Denver Post thing. You can't have pot smoking at a private concert lounge. Why? Then bars would be able to allow people to smoke pot if they bought tickets. And, well, nobody ever said there'd be places where people could smoke pot. Right? This is like we're supposed to legalize pot, but give no one a place to smoke it. I'm so glad Pete Holmes brought this up yesterday in his keynote speech, that if we're going to tell people that they can't drink in public, and they can't have public alcohol consumption, and they can't smoke in public, have public marijuana consumption, we need to give them a place to do it. I mean, you got the irony of Colorado. It's legal for a tourist to come in and buy marijuana, but most of the hotels they take it back to, they're non-smoking. They won't let you smoke in there. Public places are all covered by Clean Air Acts. You can't smoke in there. And the Amendment 64 says you can't smoke openly and publicly. So where's the tourist supposed to go smoke their pot? Nowhere. So they end up trying to break the law, trying to hide, be in an alley, behind a tree, in the park, whatever, which is exactly what legalization was supposed to get rid of. It's supposed to get rid of that stigma. It's supposed to make that unnecessary. So these nanny staters, man, these guys getting their panties in a bunch over whether or not there's going to be pot bars, thinking that there shouldn't be pot bars, just blows my mind when we have buildings whose established the established purpose of which are to dispense one of the most addictive and dangerous drugs known to man. And in Florida, not only is it, we're dispensing the most dangerous drug known to man, most dangerous recreational substance mankind commonly uses. Not only doing that, but we do it in these places, and the express purpose of the location is to consume that drug, and often to excess. Now, you're not supposed to. You're supposed to drink responsibly. They're not supposed to overserve you. Yeah, right. Come to a Florida bar with me and take a look at some of the people in there. So, we have these buildings serving a drug with the express purpose of getting altered on that drug, getting high on that drug. And at these places, we provide parking lots. And we expect that these drug users are going to drive their car to the parking lot of the building where the drug is dispensed with the express purpose of getting high on that drug, and yet we just trust them not to drive that car home. We trust them to know their own limits and to drink responsibly. How is it that we can accept that in our society and be afraid of extending that to pot smokers? How is that even rational? It's not. It's bigotry. And that's what it is. That's why these stupid arguments keep coming up over and over again, is because when you're dealing with a bigot, they've got no rational basis for their bigotry. They're just a bigot. And that's what I'm going to call it from now on. It's Canna bigotry. If you can accept bars where people are drinking and driving their cars to them, you can accept a bar with pot in it. And while I'm in Florida, man, first of all, met a lot of people all drunk. And the bar, I found out in this particular city that I was in, Miami Springs, closes at 3 a.m. Okay. Now out here in Oregon, I think it's 2 a.m. in most counties. Back in my home county in Idaho, it was like 2 a.m. in my home county is 1 a.m. And I know back like in Boston and the East Coast, man, some of these places close at midnight and stuff, right? No, 3 a.m. And that's the early bar closing. In the city next door, little township next door or whatever, 5 a.m. And on South Beach, not at all. 24 hours a day like Vegas, have alcohol all the time. Right? So we can accept that, but we can't get our heads around allowing people to bring their own pot, not even sell it to them at the bar, bring their own pot, and not even smoke it inside, smoke it outside on a closed patio where no one can see them. And that's freaking us out. Oh, man. All right. Gothic Prophet says, what about second and third shifters? No, hey, look, I'm not saying anything bad about keeping the bars open. Shit, I don't care. Keep bars open 24 hours. I don't care. I'm saying you can't accept that and then be so upset about pot, right? There's just no logical basis. That's my point. Let me make clear. I don't mean to demonize alcohol. I don't mean to demonize tobacco, right? I'll say it's a dangerous drug. I'll tell you the truth about it, right? Kills more people than any other recreational drug does. Alcohol and tobacco do. I'll be honest about it, but I'm not, smoke all you want, drink all you want, man. This is America, man. I'm all about freedom. As long as you're drinking, doesn't affect me. But this is where there's another issue though, right? Drunk driving. I saw so many of these Floridrunks stumbling out of the bar and then go and get in their car and driving off. I talked to one guy who talked about how when he found a place to live, he picked an apartment, then he points over, picked an apartment over there because it was within walking distance of the bar so he wouldn't have to drive. That was the harm reduction, right? Oh, and this was a guy who's loaded on OxyContin all the time. So, yeah, we're all worried about marijuana. All right, we're going to play some more audio here now from the Marijuana Business Association, Washington Marijuana Business Association seminar that they just held, Canna Business and the Law. It was a seminar for I-502 licensees to basically give them a question and answer period with some of the leading lawyers, marketing professionals, human resources professionals. The Seattle City Attorney, Pete Holmes, was there. Al Olson from CNBC, our good friend, was the moderator or the MC of the event. I was one of the moderators. Ben Livingston from The Stranger was one of the moderators as well. And during the lunch break, there were keynote speeches by Seattle City Attorney Pete Holmes and by this next gentleman, Washington State Liquor Control Board member Chris Marr. Now, the Washington State Liquor Control Board, ironically named, is actually in charge of marijuana under I-502. So this was one of the board members that's in control of the laws and regulations regarding the marijuana industry in Washington State, talking directly to the very people who have those licenses and have to work through those regulations. So it was a great question and answer session, a lot of great information. This is Washington State Liquor Control Board member Chris Marr.
Thanks, Pete. I appreciate that. And I'm leaving as much time as we can for Q&A. And so the next keynote speaker is Chris Marr with the Washington State Liquor Control Board.
Thank you to the MJBA for the opportunity to be here, but most importantly, thank you to all of you marijuana entrepreneurs who have foolishly invested your money in this grand social experiment. I can only add, I'm here with the government, I'm here to help. So, and thank you to Pete for his, he really got to the point. Very insightful comments and ongoing leadership on marijuana legalization. If I was smart, I'd acknowledge the wisdom of his remarks and sit down and leave you to enjoy your meal in peace. But I sat next to Jeannie Cole Wells in the state Senate, and I learned never give up the microphone until the gavel drops. So I'm just going to... So, I'm going to diverge a little bit because normally I'm used to giving kind of a just the facts ma'am type presentation. And we have a little bit more flexibility. I know we want to answer some questions. I do want to say that what you'll hear from me today represents, in some areas that aren't already enrolled, current thinking that reflect my personal point of view. I guess I'm saying with all these lawyers, please don't sue me. If you are going to sue me, my attorney's name is Bob Ferguson. It used to be a guy named Mike Ormsby for many years, by the way. I always like to have an attorney that people don't like. So all this begs the question of what qualifies me to be one of the three regulators overseeing this undertaking. Well, spent 25 years in the automobile business and a stint in the legislature, so I know what it's like not to be respected in the profession that I'm in. And I'll admit that growing up in Monterey in the 60s, I couldn't help but be exposed to a thriving marijuana culture and the commerce surrounding it. But as I've said before, even in an altered mental state watching the Grateful Dead 40 years ago at Winterland, I had no idea I'd be in this role. And none of you probably thought you'd be in the role that you find yourself in today. But when I was approached by Governor Gregoire 3 years ago about serving on the LCB, I really thought the focus would be on modernizing using my policy background, my business experience to modernize our state liquor store enterprise. And little did I realize in 2 short years, of course, we'd be out of that business and taking on a new business. So here I am. I've been asked by a number of people what I see as the biggest surprise to me coming into this undertaking. And I'd say it's really the size and scope of the well-established marijuana industry, both the illicit marketplace and medical marijuana. And I suppose the sophistication and infrastructure surrounding a market that some estimates are up to $100 billion a year, others more around 10, 15 billion, whatever it is, it shouldn't be surprising. But really, like most non-participants from a consumer standpoint, I really gave it little thought. As a state legislator, a state senator, I voted for Senate Bill 5798, Senator Colwell's very comprehensive bill in 2010 around medical marijuana. But at that point, I think most of us as legislators were really in the dark about practices and what was going on in the industry and so on. Most of us were consumed with other policy issues. So we also really had no appreciation for the larger illicit market, which obviously thrived under our blissfully ignorant noses with increased demand, public acceptance, and a decision by much of law enforcement that they were going to reduce emphasis on laws surrounding it. So for me, there was an early realization that we were not going to displace those existing channels, at least not right away, by creating a nice, easily regulated system. I remember thinking early on, well, maybe we could use 80 large producers, right? But it became quickly apparent that we had to deal with an already entrenched industry. We could choose to ignore them, but it would be at our own peril. So what the rules that have been put in place, and I think most of you appreciate that, really offer an on-ramp for participation for those folks. The rules about criminal backgrounds offer an ability to acknowledge that some of those folks have operated in an industry in the gray area, but there are ways to get around that as long as there's full disclosure. So it was also clear from these many forums we held early on that there was huge public sentiment favoring smaller grows over a number of mega grows or an oligarchy or an oligopoly. So with the decision not to cap producer licenses and with the fact that we did not have market barriers because it only cost $250 to apply for a license, it only cost $1,000 to renew it, much lower than Colorado, as you know, we ended up with about 2,900 applications. Dealing with those, not to mention the over 2,100 applications for the retail lottery process, has been challenging, although I don't think anyone ever expected it to be easy. So the whole issue of how we address this workload is a queuing theory exercise of the first order, right? It's compounded by a number of factors. First of all, limited agency size and resources. Leading up to the 502, the LCB had already succeeded in downsizing from almost 1,400 employees down to about 250 over a short period of time. There were only about 800 working in stores. A lot of those were back office support people that people could use. Now, the legislature did work with us. They didn't provide us any new money for marijuana regulation and enforcement and oversight, but they did allow us to take $5 million from the liquor revolving fund. So you're here thanks to the good graces of the booze drinkers in America, to help set up the system. The skill set required for these investigators, and many of you have dealt with them firsthand, that we need early on is unique and does require some training, and there are significant consequences from them not doing their job well, not being well trained. Also, as we get past this system launch, right, it's like a python, eating a small animal. You don't need them later. I mean, we won't not have this flow, and then we'll need to reassign those FTEs around oversight, enforcement, education, revenue collection. Lastly, in many cases, we are dealing with people with very little background in operating a business or developing business plans. The idea of someone operating out of their backpack, that literally does represent a segment of this industry. There's also very sophisticated players. We know that. There are also other factors. We have a lot of gray areas around our rules. There are factors like local zoning issues, skittish landlords. The difficulty in obtaining capital has meant that folks have had to look at ownership changes around the entities they've set up. So we have literally had thousands of application change requests, and it became an exercise almost in 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And that's not good news for those of you who really thought you had your act together and want to move through fairly quickly. And for that reason, you've seen us take steps to speed up the process by reallocating our resources, improving communication to applicants, prioritizing applications in non-moratoria or banned areas, and just keeping up on which areas have moratoria and what those moratoria means is pretty resource intensive, but AWC has worked with us. For instance, freezing application changes in some cases in order to speed up the process for everybody. Understand that our goal at the end is the same as yours. We want to get as many qualified growers, processors, and retailers to the marketplace as soon as possible. That determines the grade we get from the public. So we all want the same thing, right? But as we said all along, this will be a rolling launch. Similar to Colorado, except we will not have the benefit of a regulated medical marijuana platform to launch from. And that's been a real problem. Now, I can stand to be corrected, but my understanding is despite what you saw in the network news, on January 1, Colorado only had 8 recreational licensees open, all in Denver, right? It took till the middle of February before Boulder had 1 store. Today, there are about 80 recreational stores open in Colorado. And the fact is that the medical marijuana marketplace tends to be what's backing up the recreational system. In fact, there are questions about whether or not, even though it was helpful in launching their system, is the best system at the beginning to launch this recreational system one which gives the medical marijuana operators an incentive not to direct people towards the recreational marketplace, which is much more heavily taxed. So time will tell on that one. So application backlog. Those of you that observe our board meetings, and I see some people here that do, but most of you don't, you will know that due to some pressure from the board, there's been an attempt to bring more transparency to the process. So now we receive updates on a weekly basis about licensing application workflow, and we will be moving that direction. So if you didn't attend the meeting the other day, I will tell you, right now we do have 40 producer and processor licenses issued in 19 counties with another 7 pending, and most of those people just have to pay their fees, but they haven't at this point. So those total about 304,000 square feet of flowering canopy. We have another 40 producer applicants waiting for final inspection. Now, what we find is that the backlog at this point is not that our enforcement officers don't have time in the schedule to inspect, but we're finding a lot of folks aren't ready or weren't planning to move that fast in terms of inspection. Not in all cases, but in many. We also have 45 more applications that where we would issue licenses, except we're waiting for folks to build out. So there is a little bit of backlog. Now, I will acknowledge we did start out with 2,900 producer and processor applications, but many of those are duplicates because, as you know, we changed how we approach license issuance early on when we had this onslaught. And even if when you take out those who have been rejected based on criminal or financial background checks or our moratorium areas, we have a sizable number in process. There's no doubt about that. In fact, as of about 3 weeks ago, I think we had over 600 waiting to be referred to an investigator, have the initial contact. For retail applicants, actually we're moving pretty quickly. We have 176 assigned to 6 investigators and 158 yet to be assigned. And a number of the 158 are in areas where, to be honest with you, they're not in a huge hurry because local government has already indicated that they're. So we decided let's focus on those first. We've had really good constructive discussions with the city of Seattle, Spokane, and the larger cities. We know that it's helpful to open these up in clusters, but it's mostly important to remove glitches in the process. What happens around liquor applications, in many cases, we have jurisdictions that wait till the last minute and then file for an extension so they can make comment. No one benefits from that process here. And I'm comfortable that those cities, particularly Seattle, they totally get that. There's been a message sent down from leadership in the city that we have a lot vested in making this work well. So I'll give them a lot of credit. On caseloads, it was mentioned earlier, our caseloads for a marijuana investigator is now between 117 and 180 applicants. On the liquor side, it's 40. So we've asked these folks to take on a significant load. The important thing, I think, is that the board is committed to improving transparency around the process, as I said. Although I, as an individual board member, can't get involved in specific license approval issues because I may have to adjudicate, I am always happy when folks bring up issues of general concern about how the agency process is working. And quite frankly, all of us as board members bring those forward to top management. So we also want to, down the road, identify helpful metrics, not only for you but other stakeholders. For instance, the Association of Washington Cities said they would like some metrics. As soon as they figure out what this means in economic impact, I'm hopeful we will change some hearts and minds. So another area that's come to light, and I'm just citing a couple things that came across my desk just in the last week I got involved in, are around advertising and marketing practices. I know we have a panel that will deal with it. I think we all agree the rules are quite clear about what happens within 1,000 feet of schools and parks, and also about signage and things like therapeutic claims and advertising designed to appeal to children. Just read the rules. That's very clear. But many areas are subject to interpretation. What I've learned about this industry is you embrace the philosophy of it's better to ask forgiveness than to ask permission, right? But I want to suggest to you that the penalties are so harsh, I don't think that approach really pays off. The risk is way too great. So I think, and many of you, particularly producers, are so anxious to get out in the marketplace. You're saying, I need to identify those potential retail licensees and get my share of mind with those folks. So it means you're already pursuing a marketing plan, and we get feedback, and some of it we're thinking maybe is not quite consistent. So I think the first thing is, on your end, ask the question. First of all, know the rules. I do have some FAQs and some information I think that was going to be passed out. Go to our website and actually read the rules. I mean, they're really not that long. And for instance, on advertising, they're fairly short. But if there's a question, and you will have questions because the rules don't say everything, then ask the question. There's no advertising police that's going to say, well, what was this guy's email address and was his server located in Utah, or whatever. We'll get the answer. And some of you will be throwing each other under the bus anyway, so let's get the questions out there. So based on the feedback, I've gone back to staff, our management team, and also our communications person says, let's look at developing a policy on allowable marketing practices. Let's develop FAQs. Now, understand that some of this is a resource suck, and we're trying to get your applications out. They actually came up with a good idea. Any of you on our listserv, and if you're not on our mailing list, you should go to our website and be on it. We'll soon, I just saw the draft of it, we'll soon get an email saying, we're looking into advertising and marketing practices. What questions do you guys have? Respond to that. Give it, and say, the guy down the street's doing this. Or I know somebody, I'm not going to say who it is, but I hear from my wife that they're doing this and this. So just, let's bring those forward. So a couple things. First, as far as advertising, I think you can assume the First Amendment still exists. That the advertising prohibition as it relates to contents aimed at kids and unsupported medicinal claims, which will cause some problems down the road if we merge these two markets, obviously, that's a little bit problematic. But as far as advertising media, I can see the reluctance of federally licensed media getting involved, but that's their decision. We're not going to play police. We're not the same with the internet, where that will have to sort itself out. But you know that the medium choice has been weeklies, typically. And initially, when someone contacted the board, they gave them a ruling saying, yeah, it's going to be a problem if you distribute these in vending boxes within 1,000 feet of schools. And the board members got together and said, no, hold up here. Come on. That's an overly officious interpretation there. So we've since backtracked. The fact is that if it's incidental to the product that's distributed, it's across the street from a school in a vending box, that's fine. If you deliver flyers, that's another thing, and there you might have some issues. Another area where we're receiving a lot of questions relates to marketing practice, including promotional giveaways, client entertainment, in-store sampling, or in-store advertising, and even sampling. Now, sampling is clearly in the rules. If you go back and read, you know that you are allowed. Producers can provide 4 grams a month to processors. Processors can provide retailers up to 4 grams of usable marijuana, 6 ounces of infused solids, 24 ounces of infused liquid, and a half a gram of extract per month, per licensee. So that's kind of covered. But we have not communicated allowable practices as far as marketing and promotion. For instance, it's likely we will allow in-store advertising displays by producer processors. But someone asked me the other day, what if I want to have coasters in bars? It's a good point. It's unlikely a kid's going to walk into a bar, right? But we need to be clear about that. Someone mentioned T-shirts. Well, the initiative doesn't limit your ability to sell T-shirts inside a licensed retail store. But what if you want to give them away to the staff at that retail store? Okay. And what about if I want to set up a non-licensed website to sell all this branded merchandise that I've done such a good job developing the product around and get it distributed? All those things we need to be clear about. Where I'm leaning as an individual board member is it should be no more restrictive than on the alcohol side, and it should have a public safety or a kind of coercion rationale, right? If it doesn't serve that purpose, it's hard enough to advertise your product. Another area that just came up in the last week involves the use of licensing. So you license a brand with compensation based on total sales or net revenues. Because as many of you attempt to create market identities, and I know we'll discuss this later, the problem is that one producer isn't large enough to provide market coverage. But it would be good to be able to have a brand that has recognition. From our standpoint as an agency, we think product consistency across all our stores would be a good thing, right? That's why people buy at McDonald's. It probably wasn't the best example, but the fact is, people expect a level of quality, a level of potency, because I'm sure they'll have standards. But clearly you run into party of interest issues here. However, our staff is looking at, what about if I were to charge a fixed licensing fee and sell the packaging? Okay, that might be a way to get there, but we do have to work around party of interest issues. Those are the types of issues we receive questions on every day. I think down the road we will be convening what we call business advisory councils that we used to do on the liquor side, still do. The problem is there's so many questions coming in, I think we're going to have one for each tier almost at this point. And there is a question about, do you want to devote that much of staff resources at this point? Because they need to be getting your applications approved. So I think we're going to try to get more creative, and this idea of polling you folks on give us input is good. But if you have a question, ask the agency. You heard all these panelists saying, yeah, I talked to Randy Simmons, I talked to so-and-so. You talk to Karen McCall. If you're not getting an answer there, ask a board member. So just a couple things real quick. What will our launch look like? I think the short answer is a lot like Colorado, which means a little rocky. It'll be a rolling start. We won't have, again, we didn't have a regulated system, so we're not going to throw a switch. We won't be adding the ability of existing medical marijuana dispensaries to sell recreational. So expect to see a small number of stores at the start, with more throughout the year. Unlike Colorado, I think we'll have less concentration in one metro area and more geographic dispersion. That's already seems to be apparent. I think prices initially will be high and they will fluctuate. I don't know if they'll be up at $400 or $500 an ounce. I know that will be difficult to get regular users, that sweet spot of the market of maybe young males in their late 20s and early 30s. But, we've only said we will get 13% of the market on day one and 25% at the end of the first year. Quite honestly, we know that we have some limitations. In short, it'll be like any regulated market where there's no clear domain data or price signals to guide the market. Read Economics 101 and you'll know what I mean. So we'll also run into unforeseen issues and challenges. Call me naive, I'm not worried about the Department of Justice. I think the President and the Attorney General are sincere in terms of abiding by the Cole Memorandum. You will have these nettlesome issues that are being brought up by other federal agencies. From what I hear talking to folks, there is this kind of little passive-aggressive dynamic going on amongst different agencies where people are a little irritated at DOJ because you guys unleash this whole thing, you fix the problem, right? Take the Bureau of Reclamation issue. If you read the story, they have no way of monitoring who's violating. And what happens if you do violate? We're going to turn you over to the Department of Justice. Well, they issued the Cole Memorandum. So anyway, I'm not saying ignore that and your attorneys would say, oh, no, this is serious. Okay. But I'm saying, let's everyone take a deep breath. The banking issue will continue to be a problem. The discussions that the Department of Financial Institutions have had with federal regulators have been encouraging. I think we're all a little disappointed that the credit unions have decided not to bank the retail sector at this point. I'm not an expert, but quite frankly, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I do agree that the logic that's being offered back is these are not transactions between two licensed entities. However, I think we know more about what's going on at the retail sector than anywhere else. Between surveillance cameras and our traceability system and the huge penalties you get if you divert product. But I'm hopeful we'll get there. Here's the bottom line. At the end of the day, having been a legislator, credit unions and banks fight like cats and dogs and are much aggrieved when one has part of the market the other doesn't have. As soon as the dam breaks, I think it'll get there. However, that doesn't help you tomorrow or maybe even July. So for that reason, in the next 6 months, 6 weeks, if you come into the liquor board office, you'll see us knocking out a wall. We have a huge cash counting area. You'll by appointment be coming in to pay your excise taxes. We've agreed also to take your B&O and sales tax, by the way, because we don't want people to have to make all these trips. Garda will probably be coming and picking up from us twice a day, and we'll ship our money off to the state bank, which apparently views it as much cleaner since it's coming from us. So, issues to be resolved. Let me just say I'm totally in agreement with Pete, number one on the list, medical marijuana. Some of us may be of different minds on this, but I think there is a way to merge the two systems. that addresses the concerns of the feds and others and protects the interests of patients. 5887 was derailed at the 11th hour, maybe over a couple of cocktails. I can tell you my theory, but it's not up to us to figure out who to blame. The deal was 95% of the way there, right? So let's not go back to square one. However, I do want to say this. What is clear is the legislation regarding medical marijuana did look past, to some extent, legitimate uses of issues about patient access and the ability of the recreational system as it exists to serve their interests. There's no doubt about that. We have to go back and have that discussion, and quite frankly, the Liquor Control Board cannot lead that discussion. We're an interested party in other ways. So I'm hopeful that the medical establishment and others will do what they should be doing on health-related issues and lead, okay? But we can talk about that. The whole piece about local government, listen, I was as big a skeptic as anyone in the legislature about local government always coming and putting out their hand, but they make a good point, right? So when we early on sat down with local law enforcement, they say, you want me to keep the bad guys in checks, the illicit market? They just cut my budget by 16%. I got council members saying, what are your priorities? Why are you spending your time on that? This isn't a public safety issue. This is a revenue issue. If it's a revenue issue, to be honest with you, I think they deserve part of the revenue. But that's something that will be worked out, and I'm confident that we will. I think we need to take, as we move forward, take a hard look at the System 502 put in place. I think certainly the existing excise tax structure and the ability of the present tax structure to optimize state revenues needs to be in play in the next couple of years. I think we need to look at the three-tier system, which as it exists is an artifice of the old liquor three-tier system. The question is, do processors constitute a meaningful separate tier? Probably not. Do we need a distributor tier? I think so. I think that will allow producers to operate more efficiently, and some of you larger producers to maybe provide some expertise. So I think that's worth looking at. Just saying, looking away a little bit from our regulatory oversight, I want to acknowledge what Pete's shop has been doing in the city of Seattle, really looking at changing laws relative to public consumption. I don't know what that looks like, but the fact is that the law, as it's written, in some ways promotes public consumption, right? Because we don't provide any private off-the-street place for tourists and others to consume. That being the case, I think at some point someone needs to look into these laws, look at licensing establishments, not alcohol businesses, by the way, that allow consumption. For the model to work economically, it's been suggested, look at the Amsterdam model. But what does the Amsterdam model offer? It offers the chance to sell this product in your shop. Otherwise, the economics don't pencil out. Someone's not going to generate 50 cents of revenue and sit in your place for 2 hours and make that work. However, Pete and I were talking in the back, I think they can beta test this idea and address the concerns about these being problems with kids getting access. We answer those questions. I think we can have thoughtful discussions going away. I think there are huge opportunities around tourism and economic development which leverage our regulated recreational system. So I'll just close by saying, we do have to address the real concerns that some parts of the public have about socializing marijuana. And you can say, do we have to fight that battle again? Yes, amongst some of the public, 46%, you still do. And the best way to do that is start with acknowledging that we have a contract based on 502. Let's do a good job executing that, and then let's go back and have a discussion about how we need to make some changes. I think that's the best way to move ahead. And if you folks can be partners with your regulators in this case, as well as government, I think that will happen a lot quicker than we think. So thanks.
That's Chris Marr from the Washington State Liquor Control Board speaking to the Marijuana Business Association Canna Business and the Law seminar that took place yesterday in Seattle, Washington. And you'll be able to download that track and all of the tracks that I got from the association's event. You can find them at 420radio.org in our 420 Radio News section. Just click on the big 420 Radio icon. It'll take you there to the archives. Thanks for joining us here for a live show. Remember, Memorial Day is a federal holiday, so we'll be taking the day off to salute our veterans, those close to us, and those we don't even know who helped keep this country free. For all of us here at 420radio.org, thanks for joining us. Come on back at 8 o'clock Pacific time for the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. We'll be live here with Herb, and we've got an interview with Mark from Chimera. They're playing at Hempfest this year. For everyone here at 420 Radio, I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it.